everyone. Welcome to BWS Dialogues, the new podcast from Brandwidth Solutions. I'm Meg Sizemore, the digital content manager here with Brandwidth Solutions. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Stephanie Fox. Stephanie has been a user experience practitioner for more than 25 years, and she recently published a book on the topic called Would You Date Your Website? Stephanie, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Meg. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. So let's just jump right in. The first question we have for you today is about your experience just working in websites and user experience in our trade that's known as UX. And you've been doing it for 25 years. So what prompted you to write the book that you just released?
Um, yeah, I suppose timing. I've I've always had a book in me. I've always written fiction and journaled and blog posts and conference presentations, things like that. But I've always had a book in me, and this idea really started to percolate. I'm going to say 15 years ago. It started as a blog post and then turned into a conference talk. And it's just been noodling around for a while. And I declared a few years ago that 2023 would be the year of the book. And so that's when I dedicated daily time to getting it written. And it was about a year and a half process to get it out the door.
Wow, that
Um,
must have taken a lot of dedication.
a lot of early mornings, yes, because I had to work on it before client work.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of clients, I mean, user experience is talked a lot about in consumer spaces, but what makes it a must-have in the technical B2B spaces that we work in with our clients?
Well, user experience is all about relationships. It's all about connecting. The technical B2B space it's about the science, and it isn't a gray area. Consumers, B2B buyers are looking for answers, but relationships are really what people are buying. And if you're in a competitive situation and all of the companies know the science and can deliver on the science, it's really going to come down to who do you want to be in a relationship with? Who do you trust to have that long-term, ongoing back and forth with somebody that's going to help grow your business as well? So it's really about that connection, credibility, and trust.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about that in our blogs. So we appreciate that you mentioned Brand with Solutions blogs in your book and our ability to get it right, as you say, particularly in terms of having scannable content. Do you think that writers still underestimate the importance of ensuring that web content is scannable?
Absolutely, yes. Um, your blog post was a great example of using frequent descriptive headings to break up those big blocks of text. And that goes a long way to creating that scannability, as you mentioned. The fact is, people don't read online top to bottom, left to right, the way they do when they open up a book. And writers just want to write. They have an idea, they're trying to communicate, they're getting it down on the page. They're not often thinking about how that end user is interacting with it. But the fact is, screens and the hyperlink itself have changed the way that we read. Because we read differently online, you need to write differently. And that means building in white space to improve the scannability. So we mentioned headings, but also uh, bulleted lists, um, call outs, imagery, all of these things help to break up a big block of text. And that's important because when you're scanning, that buyer, that visitor is giving you just seconds. So they want to be able to quickly read those headings, get an idea what the page is about. And if they think it's going to answer their question, then they will actually dive in and read the content. But it has to pass that scannability test first.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of great things there, and scannability is so important. A lot of our clients hear me say this, but one of my favorite facts about B2B marketing is that around 70% of the buyer journey is spent in self-service mode. And that's when your buyers and your audience are scanning through the content. So, can you dive a little bit more into why this scannability structure matters for B2B buyers, specifically in science and technical fields?
Yes, well, we're impatient. Buyers are impatient, people in general are impatient, we're pressed for time. And so when you're vetting an organization, you've done some research, you've got, 5 or 10 possible companies that can help you out. You've got specific questions that you need answers, and that's what you're scanning for. And, you know, these technical buyers, researchers, engineers, clinicians, they're skeptical by nature. They want to know the science, the data. Are your claims real? And we know they're not reading scientific journals start to finish. They don't have the time. They need it in bite-sized format. So content that's easy to scan and consume, it's going to save them time. They're going to make that connection quickly with your organization, and that helps to build the trust. If it's difficult for them to find something or they don't understand what you have to offer, any hesitation over, is this the right place to click? Is this the right place to find an answer? All those things are going to breed dissatisfaction and a poor user experience. And those translate directly to your brand and to the potential relationship with you. So when it's easy to consume, saves time, that's where it's building trust, so that structure of the content is every bit as important as the substance.
Yeah, I think that's great. The structure really does apply to both blog content outlines and web page design. So let's just dive even a little deeper and tap into what impact the actual web design of a page has on that trust that we're talking about building.
Yeah, well, a lot of it goes to making sure that your content, your messaging aligns with how the user wants to do business with you. How do they want to buy from you? So when you structure your page so that the most important answers are prioritized, and your headings, descriptive headings, as we talked about, are connecting directly with those questions that they need answered, when there isn't any clutter and they can get through it easily. All of these design and layout factors are going to help basically create an environment they don't mind spending time in, right? You're making it easy for them. There's no friction. And when you combine that with the right calls to action to nudge them forward along their journey, then you're more likely to convert.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think, give me an example of something that would add clutter to a website. What are, maybe some of the mistakes that you see and ways that businesses can improve on their structure and that web design?
Where to begin? Um, one of the biggest things I see, one is, I guess it is that lack of scannability. It's a big chunk of text, a wall of text, and you're basically forcing the person to read through it to get an idea. And if they are busy, if they're impatient, they're simply not going to read it. They're going to hit the back button, right? The other thing that causes a disconnection is when the content is overly ego driven. When the organization is, we do this and we've won this and we do that, and it's very much focused on the organization pushing the messages they want to see, as opposed to what their user actually needs answers to. Often those are not the same things. So doing the user research allows us to understand what the user needs, what the buyer needs at their various parts of their journey. And when you have that content on the page, that's when you're going to make that connection. And your buyer sees, oh, they get me, they understand my issue. I'm going to invest some time getting to know them a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned two great things there. Those are definitely things that we focus a lot on in helping clients guide that strategy for their blog content and in other relevant content across their website. In the science world, we like to have very deep technical information, but in a blog, it's really important to distill that down into the everyday language and break up long paragraphs with things that are interesting and ways, you can keep that reader interested to continue on through. And then again, in that other part you mentioned where it's overly, promotional, we try to follow this specific two-thirds, one-third pie chart. So, let's say in that two-thirds, we follow the structure of having a little bit more thought leadership first. Um, Speaking out onto what you're an expert in your field and in your industry, and then driving those readers to say, okay, in that bottom one-third of your blog or on that web page, here's why we're the expert in it and we can partner with you for this particular topic. So I think you mentioned some really hard-hitting points there for how to structure blogs and web page design. Just thinking more into user experience and UX, what do you see teams underestimating or even overlooking most often?
Sadly, it is the user themselves. I think in the minds of many in organizations, if they're not familiar with this field, user experience equates to design. And how does it look? But you have to do the research. You have to understand the users, as I just mentioned, um, in order to know what content they need to enter into a relationship with you. And once you figure out that content, then you can design the right size container to hold it, as opposed to the other way around, where you're picking a pretty template and then stuffing the content into it, for example. So yes, unfortunately, it is the user that often gets overlooked in favor of going for the pretty, or as I mentioned in the last bit, pushing the content the organization wants to get out there.
Yeah, remembering who you're writing that content for is so important in your marketing strategy. So, speaking of marketers, in a regulated or technical industry, what's your message around the role that UX plays to marketers?
Yeah, in the technical industry, I think it's even more important. Things like certification, technical and scientific products, the regulations. Um, it- these are basic boxes that organizations need to check, and they certainly level the playing field because you either have them or you don't. So if you're the organization that understands your users better than your competitors, then you can communicate with them in a way that nurtures those trusted relationships. And they feel more comfortable and more confident with your abilities, your offering, their future relationship with you. So you can nudge them down the path to conversion, which of course helps you achieve your business outcomes.
Right. I think you said it very well there. And this has gone by so quickly, but we're already down to our last question of this episode of the podcast. The last question is around artificial intelligence. It is such a trending topic still, and it already has such a huge impact on how we interact with information from whatever platforms you're on, websites everywhere on the internet, you're seeing artificial intelligence being threaded into marketing and user experience. So we've certainly seen this already in terms of search and SEO. Is it affecting how users interact with websites too?
It is absolutely, and you're right. AI is everywhere. It's hard to get away from it, and hard to know what is AI and what isn't, and that's where some of the issue is. Of course, it's too easy to know, or too uh, difficult to know what the full impacts are yet. But there are two immediate ones that come to mind in terms of behaviors. And one is that, of course, fewer people are even getting to organizations' websites in the first place because they don't have to. They do a search in Google and the AI overview gets served up and they find their answer. Or they're going to ChatGPT, which has just scraped all of the content from an organization's website and again serves it up there. So there's less and less incentive for people to visit organizations' website where they can go through your finely crafted journey toward conversion events. So they're getting information piecemeal. And the other part is that as readers, of course, we are more skeptical, right? Is this content AI generated? Or was it written by the organization? Are the claims accurate? So AI has really heightened this level of skepticism that's already pretty healthy in science-based industries. So deciding what is real, it's really going to make it harder to create content that is credible and is able to nurture the relationships kind of past that sniff test. So definitely changing. Pace is going to increase. Who knows what it's going to look like? It's definitely a space I find challenging to keep pace with, but definitely watching closely.
Yeah, I think everyone is wondering how AI is going to impact the future of search and websites. And you briefly mentioned, this skepticism of, is this content AI written or was it created by a human? So can you tell me if, let's talk about what transparency means for user experience on a website. Do you think that AI policies are a must-have on your website now that we live in a world of, AI generated content?
Yeah, you are seeing that and hearing about it more and more. Organizations having statements about the authenticity, and it really does come down to that. Making your brand's personality come through in your content, um, making mistakes, sounding conversational and approachable. If it's too polished and too, grad school formal, then it doesn't quite pass the test. Um, and and again, when you take the time to understand your users, then you can write into that content, you're using their vocabulary, even their, entire phrases or sound bites that you can capture from conversations from them. These things all lend that authenticity to your content to make it sound more credible and pass that skepticism.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think everyone wants authenticity in their content. It's just a matter of how fast you can get that out in real time. We just live in such a fast-paced world. So, getting out blogs every month, that is just part of our routine in marketing and strategy. Keeping fresh content on websites and being ahead in the thought leadership side of things. So I genuinely appreciate your conversation with me today. And I do just want to ask you a question out of my own curiosity in regards to your book. Do you have a favorite chapter in your book, Would You Date Your Website?
Oh gosh. I'm not sure I have a favorite chapter. I really just, uh, you know, I I love the concept as a whole and the feedback I've had just on when people hear the title, Would You Date Your Website? It's something that really resonates. If you think about someone coming to your website for the first time, um, you need to be ready for that interaction. You need to understand, who you want to be in a relationship with and make yourself presentable, and so you're going to attract the people that you want to be in a relationship with. And then when that first date comes, you have to make a fantastic first impression because you're going to be judged immediately, right? And if you make it past that handshake, you have to have the conversation and get to know one another. And it's all leading toward that coveted second date or second website visit, which is very hard to come by, right? So yeah, the whole analogy really resonates because we've all been on bad dates. Most of us have been bad dates ourselves. Um, so we get it. I will say the final part 4 of the book it's called Keeping the Spark Alive. And it is really the part of websites that most companies neglect, and that is the maintenance, the everyday maintenance, the proactive things that you do to check for bugs, and does your form still work as new browsers and new smartphones come out. It's that proactive sort of care and feeding of your site that lets basically the user experience stay performance, stay aligned with your users so that you can continue to nurture successful, happy relationships.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think we've all experienced a bad date and that feeling of hitting a broken link and seeing a 404 error for something you are really wanting to get to know more. So I think the concept of dating your website is incredibly creative. And Stephanie, I just appreciate you talking to us today and sharing your insights on user experience, websites, and content creation. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Meg. This has been really fun.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of BWS Dialogues. And we look forward to sharing more content with you in the future.